Today I am going to teach about body fluid and circulation. So this is today's topic. As we know, our body is made up of 70% of water. So this water that constitute our body should need to move. First thing is the most important thing, that is every organism's body is made up of 70% of water. So this water that is present in the body of an organism is divided into two parts. How? Either it can be intracellular or it can be extracellular. As the name suggests, intracellular means inside the cell. So this is, suppose a cell, this is the nucleus, and this part of the cell consists of water, is known as protoplasm. So when we are talking about the intracellular fluids, all the protoplasm that is present inside the cells are considered. So this intracellular fluid consists of approximately 55% of total body fluid, whereas the extracellular fluid consists of around 45% of total body fluid. So if intracellular fluid is present inside the cell, which is mostly protoplasm, then extracellular fluid is those fluids that are present outside the cell, so which we commonly know as blood. So these are the extracellular fluid which are present outside the cells, however inside one organism's body. So extra means outside, so these are basically present outside the cells. So why the fluids are important? Why these fluids are important? Because as we know, our body have different solutes, like that may be organic, may be inorganic. Along with that, these solutes need to be dissolved in a medium so that it can be carried out to different body parts. Along with that, what we need, our hormones are secreted. These are needed to be transported through our body to different body organs. For that, a transportation medium is required, which is nothing but the fluids. Except then that, we also know that our body need to maintain the homeostasis or temperature, as we all are warm blooded animals. So the temperature can be maintained by a fluid filled matrix, which is nothing but our body fluid. So that's why body fluid and circulation is most important. So a fluid will give all the varieties, all the what we can say, all the things that are responsible to maintain a living organism, whereas the circulation is responsible to move that body fluid along one living organism's body. So after this, it is clear that every organisms require body fluid. Why? As every organism's body is made up of 70% of water. So this 70% of water is distributed in an organism's body by two different kind of fluids. One is intracellular fluid, another one is extracellular fluid. So this intracellular fluid make up to 55% of total body fluid, whereas the extracellular fluids make up to 45% of the total body fluid. Intra means inside, extra means outside, cellular means cell. So those fluids which are present inside the cell is known as intracellular fluid, which is majorly protoplasm. So the fluids or body fluids that are trapped inside one cells in the form of protoplasm is known as intracellular fluids. Except that, those body fluids which move outside the cells, which are mainly responsible for maintaining our body homeostasis, doing the circulation, exchanging the gases, are known as this extracellular fluid, which is example is blood. Okay. So when we are talking about extracellular fluids, as they are not present inside the cells, they are present outside the cells. So for performing a normal function, these extracellular fluids should move inside one organism's body. So the movement, for the movement of the extracellular fluid, one mechanism is required. So that mechanism is known as circulation. So what is circulation? Circulation we can define as, basically it is the process or the mechanism of movement of different fluids inside one organism's body. So what is this circulation is then? So circulation is the mechanism of movement of the body fluid inside the body of a living organism. Circulation can be of two types depending on what kind of extracellular circulation or extracellular fluids, how the movement of extracellular fluid is taking place. Okay, so as we know, I have already said that body fluids are of two types, intracellular and extracellular. Intracellular means it is present inside the cells. So it will be common to all living organisms. सब living organism रो body रे cells अच्छी तो से मानकर cell भितर definitely fluid थिबो तेणु intracellular fluid टा समस्त पे common. मे बी तांको भितर थिबा reagent अलगा हे पारे but fluid समस्त पे same. समस्त cell भितर intracellular fluid थाए. However, extracellular fluid रो movement को नेकी circulation mechanism टा two type रे divide होची. जो एक्स्ट्रा सेल्युलर फ्लूइड माने जो माने कि सेल बाहर रोचंती से माने बॉडी भितर केमिति मूव करिवे ता ऊपर डिपेंड करी कि सर्कुलेशन मेकानिज्म ता टू टाइप रे डिवाइड हेची. वन इज ओपन सर्कुलेशन, another is closed circulation. What is this open circulation? As the name suggests, the process of circulation or the process of movement of the extracellular fluid, if it don't follow a particular path, a confined path, then it is known as a open circulation. That means body रे हमारे organs माने अच्छी tissue माने अच्छी suppose heart अच्छी lungs अच्छी liver अच्छी tissue माने अच्छी muscles माने अच्छी यही सब जगह को छाड़ी देले body रो भीतर part रे जल्दी body fluid टा for example किए blood openly move कला से movement को हमें open circulation कहबा. कौन सी chambered vessels नहीं जहाँ through रे move करिवो कि कौन सी different defined pathway तापे नहीं move करिया पे. ठीक अच्छे. तो open circulation means the fluid will move openly inside the body without any pathway. That is known as the open circulation. So in open circulation there will be a pumping organ, like heart. So this pumping organ will pump the bloods or pump the extracellular fluid so that they can move inside the body. After that there will be no closed vessels. Third thing, as we know, if there is no confined pathway for the movement of the extracellular fluids, then definitely it will move in a larger surface or a surface area or a larger area volume. So if the fluid is moving in a larger area, then the pressure on the fluid will be very low. So in case of open circulation, the blood pressure is very low. So when we are describing about open circulation, first thing, in open circulation the extracellular fluids are pumped through a pumping organ, that is a heart, and it moves inside the body cavity without any confined pathway. Because of the presence of larger volume or larger space for the movement of the body fluid, the BP of the circulatory, the blood pressure or the pressure of the circulatory fluid is very low. But when we are talking about the closed circulation, here also a pumping organ is required which will pump the blood or pump the extracellular fluid, that is heart. However, there is a defined path for the process of closed circulation. Closed circulation ପାଇଁ ଆମର defined path ମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଯୋଉଗୁଡ଼ାକ କେଉଁ ମାନେ vessels ମାନେ. So vessels ର example କିଏ veins, arteries. तो एगुड़ाक कौन है डिफाइन पाथ होती है हाथ में देखिपे जो जो वेन रे इंजेक्शन हो जो आर्टरी रे ब्लड फ्लो हो. सो दीज आर द कन्फाइंड पाथवे फॉर द मूवमेंट ऑफ द ब्लड और द बॉडी फ्लूइड. सो इन केस ऑफ क्लोज्ड सर्कुलेशन द कन्फाइंड pathway is present for the extracellular fluid for its movement. So here there is presence of vessels through which the blood or the body fluid will move. So these vessels are like veins or arteries. Okay, so if vessels are present for the movement of the body fluid, as we know vessels are very small in diameter. So if the entire body fluid will move through that, definitely it will experience higher pressure. So in case of closed circulation, the blood pressure is very high. Let's compare open and closed circulation. In open circulation, the blood is bathed or the blood flow openly by the help of a pumping organ inside the entire body cavity without any confined pathway. Whereas in case of closed circulation, the blood flows by the help of a pumping organ through a confined pathway which we call as vessels. The vessels can be veins or arteries. In case of open circulation, BP is very low. Why? Because the space is very large. So the pumping organ can't produce that much of pressure. However, in case of closed circulation, as there is the presence of vessels inside which the body fluid will move, so the blood pressure is very high, or the pumping organ creates a very high blood pressure. Now coming to the function of circulatory system. Why circulatory system is important? So it is because of three things: T, R and P. So what is the T here? This means transportation. So how circulation help in transportation? Circulation majorly help in the transportation of different materials. That materials may be minerals or vitamins that are required for the body growth. These materials may be oxygen, carbon dioxide, gases for the process of breathing. This transportation may be the transport of hormones, or enzymes that are responsible for different biological processes. So when coming to the R part, R means regulation. So how circulation regulate our body process? By maintaining homeostasis, by regulating body temperature, by maintaining salt balance. When we are coming to the P part, that is the protection. So how circulation protects our body? By clotting the blood flow when there is a wound, by providing immunity against various pathogens. So the three major function of circulation is transportation, regulation and protection. Transportation of mineral, vitamins, oxygen, carbon dioxide like respiratory gases, hormones and enzymes that are responsible for maintaining the body processes. And how it regulates our body process? By maintaining the homeostasis, by maintaining temperature of the body, and by maintaining the salt balance of body. You know now what is salt balance? When we undergo any diarrhea process or any other body process where we lost a very huge amount of salt, we need to go through a saline giving process. So this is how salt balance should be maintained, otherwise we need to go to be hospitalized. So this is maintained by the circulation process. Then what is protection? Protection can be provided by clotting or by immunity. So what is clotting? When there is a wound, our blood continuously doesn't flow outside the wound. After some time there is the deposition of certain material by which the blood flow stops. That mechanism is known as clotting, which is purely done by the fluids, body fluids, which is generally blood. Then coming to the immunity part, this blood or extracellular fluid provide immunity to our body, thereby we can protect ourselves from the extracellular pathogens, that may be bacteria, that may be virus, that may be any parasite. So these are the major functions provided by circulatory system. So when we are talking about the circulatory system consists of two parts. Or consist of two components. What are the components of one circulatory system? First is cardiovascular system and the second one is lymphatic system. So in case of cardiovascular system, there is the presence of a pumping organ, that is mostly heart, the vessels that will carry the extracellular fluid or blood, and the circulatory fluid, which is mostly blood. When we are talking about lymphatic system, it consists of lymphoid tissues, the path, that is lymphatic vessels, and the circulatory fluid, that is lymph. So circulatory system is majorly consists of two components, one is cardiovascular system, another one is the lymphatic system. The cardiovascular system consists of heart, blood vessels and blood, and the lymphatic system is consist of lymphoid tissue, lymphatic vessels and the lymph. So before describing the entire thing, let's first understand what is blood, which is the most important part of circulatory system. As we know that in almost all living organisms, the body fluid is represented in a form of in the form of blood. So blood is a major circulatory fluid in case of most of the living organisms. So first of all, we should be clear about what is blood. So the blood is the major circulatory fluid in case of most of the living organism. The blood volume is around 5 to 5.5 liter in case of a healthy human being, when we are talking about the blood of a human being. So it should be 5 to 5.5 liter in the body of a healthy human being. So blood is nothing but a connective tissue which consists of different cellular parts, which is mostly known as blood corpuscles or the formed elements or the blood cells. Along with that, the fluid part which help these cells to circulate in the circulatory system is known as the plasma. So plasma is the fluidic part of the blood. So blood consists of two parts. One is the cellular part known as formed elements or corpuscles. And a fluid part known as the plasma. So, this blood corpuscles consist of around 45% of the total blood volume, whereas the plasma consists of around 55% of the total blood volume. So, this blood is nothing but a connective tissue with no fibers in the matrix. So, blood is the connective tissue with no fibers in the matrix. Blood is mainly consist of two parts. One is the cells or the formed elements and the plasma or the liquid part. So, cells, there are three different major kind of cells present inside the blood. What are the three type of cells? We all know that is RBC or erythrocyte. Second is WBC or leukocytes. Last is platelets or thrombocyte. So, first thing first is the RBC or erythrocyte. So, RBC is nothing but the red blood cell. Why we call it red? Because it is red in appearance. So, how RBC actually look? So, RBC is more or less oval in structure, or more or less we can say coin like in structure with a concave surface. That means if we will look it from sidewise, it will kind of look like this. The diameter varies from 7 to 8 micrometer and the thickness is around 2 micrometer. So, RBCs are concave cells with 4 to 8 micrometer of diameter and approximately 2 micrometer of thickness. So, RBCs are the non-nucleated cells. That means they don't possess any nucleus. Why? As we all know, in every part of our life, suppose we have 10 things. If we don't need 2 things, we try to get rid of that 2 things, and we need to acquire in the things that we require in the place of that 2 things. So, it's better to get rid of those things which we don't need. So, the same concept goes here. When we are talking about RBCs, RBCs sole purpose is the gaseous exchange. So, they need to exchange the respiratory gases, which is oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, for that purpose they don't need any kind of cellular organelles. So, most of the cellular organelles like nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, they are not present inside the RBC. Then what is present inside the RBC? The major thing that is present inside the RBC is hemoglobin. So, this hemoglobin gives the typical red color to the RBC. So, because of the presence of this hemoglobin, RBC is red in color. However, because of the absence of all these things, this is the first kind of cells which don't possess, or first kind of living cells which don't possess a nucleus and a mitochondria together. So in that place they possess hemoglobin. So what is this hemoglobin? Hemoglobin has two parts. One is the hem part and second is the globin part. So one hemoglobin consists of 4 hem subunits and each hem subunit has one iron atom. So whole together one hemoglobin has 4 iron atom which help in the carry of oxygen. Each hemoglobin consists of 4 globin chains and these globin chains are important for the carrying of carbon dioxide. So altogether this hemoglobin helps in the transportation of or the carry of oxygen as well as carbon dioxide. So the hemoglobins are present inside these RBCs, thereby replacing all other unnecessary cellular organelles. So hemoglobins are present in RBC. So what is the amount of hemoglobin present inside the total blood volume then? So in the total blood volume around 14.5 gram of hemoglobin is present in 100 ml of blood. Not RBC but 100 ml of blood. So if we will talk about 100 ml of blood, we will have 14.5 gram of hemoglobin in it. Along with all these, the total count of RBC inside our blood is around 4.5 to 5 million per mmq of blood in human male female and 5 to 5.5 into 10 to the power 6 per mmq of blood in human male. So this is all the basic characteristics of RBC. So if I will start from this, our blood cells is divided into 3 types: RBC, WBC and platelet. RBCs are otherwise known as erythrocyte. RBC's full form is red blood cell. As its name suggests, it is red in color. RBCs are the non-nucleated concave cells with diameter 4 to 8 micrometer and thickness 2 micrometer. So these RBCs generally lack all other necessary cellular organelles which are replaced by the presence of a pigment, a specialized pigment, that is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin consists of 2 parts. One is hem part, another is globin part. Hem part consists of 4 subunit, each subunit with 1 iron atom, and each iron atom can carry 1 oxygen. The globin part also have 4 subunit or 4 chains. So these globins help in carry of the carbon dioxide. So the total amount of hemoglobin present inside the blood is around 14.5 gram per 100 ml of blood. The total count of RBCs that is present inside blood is 4.5 to 5 million in case of healthy human female and 5 to 5.5 million in case of healthy human male. So after knowing the general characteristics of RBC, let's talk about certain exceptions. Okay, the first exception is not all the RBCs in living organisms are unnucleated. Except human, let's say fish, amphibians and other organisms also have nucleated RBCs in them. The largest RBCs are found in case of amphibians, whereas the smallest RBCs are found in case of musk deer. Coming to the abnormality part. So as we know, RBCs are responsible for the carry out of gaseous exchange or which help us in breathing. After breathing we are taking oxygen inside. So this oxygen will be transported through the help of RBC of blood to different body parts, and the carbon dioxide of different body part will be excreted out or respirated out by the help of this RBC only. So RBC is basically helping us or helping our body for the process of respiration or breathing or the gaseous exchange. So whenever our body require much more oxygen concentration or whenever our body require much more breathing, at that time the requirement of RBC also increases. So when our body will require the higher amount of oxygen concentration? When we are exercising, when we are doing certain muscular activity, when we are living in a higher altitude. At that condition our body will require higher amount of oxygen or our body will require to discard more amount of carbon dioxide. So at that condition RBC number increases, and which lead into a condition known as polycythemia. So if number of RBC increase, it will give rise to a condition known as polycythemia, which happens in case of muscular activities or in higher altitude. However, the second condition, when the number of RBCs are reduced, is known as anemia. So when the number of RBC is reduced, that condition is known as anemia. So when anemia takes place, because of any disease condition, that may be hereditary, may not be hereditary, if the number of RBC is reduced, that is known as anemia. So certain hereditary anemic conditions are sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, these are the hereditary anemic condition. Beyond that, by deficiency of certain nutrients like vitamin B12, anemic condition can also happen. Example is pernicious anemia, where because of the deficiency of vitamin B12, anemic condition is persisting. So this is all about the RBCs. Now let's go to the second important blood cells, that is WBC. Yes, I would like to say one thing here. RBC is the major kind of blood cells which account for 4.5 to 5 million per mm cube of blood in case of female, and 5 to 5.5 million per mm cube of blood in case of male, which is around 99% of lived, which is around maximum part of a blood cells. Now coming to the second important kind of blood cells, that is WBC. As the name suggests, it is white in color, thus known as white blood cells, which is otherwise known as the leukocytes. So WBCs are basically divided into two types, depending on the presence of cytoplasmic granules. So the first type is granulocytes and the second type is agranulocyte. So on the basis of presence or absence of cytoplasmic granules, the WBCs or leukocytes are divided into two types, granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes are those WBC which have granules inside the cells. So the name suggests granulocyte, cyte means cell, granulo means granules. So the granule containing cells are known as granulocytes. So the granulocytes are again divided into three types. Neutrophils, eosinophils and the basophils. So why granulocytes are divided again? Depending on the reactivity or depending on the chemical property of this cytoplasm, the granulocytes is divided into three types: neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils. So what is neutrophils then? So neutrophils are the neutrophils have the multi-lobed nucleus inside it. The first condition of neutrophil is multi-lobed nucleus. So neutrophils have multi-lobed nucleus inside it. Along with that, the cytoplasm of the neutrophils don't react to any kind of acidic or basic solution. hence the name suggests neutrophils. That means it is neutral to the reaction against any kind of acid or bases. So neutrophils are basically the multi-lobed nuclear cells which are neutral to any kind of acid and basic reaction. So why neutrophils are important? Neutrophils normally what happens, they circulate inside the blood flow for around 10 hours or so. So after 10 hours, suppose I will draw it here, we have our blood vessels. So inside these blood vessels our blood is used to flow. So these blood vessels are lined by the epithelial cells. So once the neutrophils circulate inside the blood vessels, inside the blood, after 10 hours what they will do, they will invade this epithelial cell, and after invading it they will escape the blood flow and go outside. So the neutrophil will now escape the blood flow and go outside of the blood vessels by invading the epithelial cells. The process is known as extravasation or diapediasis. So by the mechanism of extravasation or diapediasis, the neutrophil leaves the blood flow and goes outside, and they enter inside one kind of tissue or different tissues. So after going inside the tissue, they remain alive for around 2 to 3 days there. What they do there, they usually fight against bacteria. So neutrophils are those cells which provide immunity to our cells, to our body against bacterial infection. So what is the number of neutrophils then? The number of neutrophil is around 3000 to 6000 per mmQ of blood. I forgot to tell about the WBC number. WBC number is around 4000 to 10,000 per mmQ of blood. So neutrophils are around 3000 to 6000 per mmQ of blood. Now coming to the eosinophil. Eosinophils have bilobed nucleus. So they also stay alive. Eosinophils are bilobed nucleus. As they react and stain in the presence of a acidic dye eosin, they are so named eosinophil. So as they react to the acidic dye, they are also known as acidophils. So what they do inside our body, they also survive for 10 hours inside the blood flow, and they also, like neutrophil, invade the epithelial layer of the blood vessels and escape the flow by the mechanism known as diapediasis or extravasation, and go and used to kill the helminthic infection or the parasitic infection that takes place in our body. So eosinophils are basically present in the different lining of our body, like our mucosal lining, gastrointestinal lining, different lining of our body which are exposed to helminthic infections. So eosinophil helps us to fight against helminthic infections. So these are the cells having bilobed nucleus. And these are around 300 to 600 per mmQ of blood. Now coming to the basophils. Basophils are those cells with bilobed nucleus and they react against a basic dye, hence the name called as basophil. So basophils contain inside the cytoplasm histamines kind of molecular histamines, mostly histamines. What these histamines do? During any allergy reaction, these basophils go and release the histamine to its, thereby reducing the allergic reaction by a mechanism known as hypersensitivity. So basophils are those cells which are responsible for allergic reaction or hypersensitivity and protect us against different allergies. So basophils are also again bilobed nuclear cells, and they are almost nil or negligible. They are present in a negligible amount, like 0 to 100 per mmQ of blood. Now this is all about the granulocytes. Coming to the agranulocyte. Agranulocyte are those cells having no granules in the cytoplasm. Again agranulocytes are of two types, lymphocytes and monocytes. Coming to the lymphocytes, lymphocytes are those are the main immune cells. As I have already said, the circulatory system has a function known as protection. It protects our body from different infections. So the major immune cells are the lymphocyte, which is again divided into two types: T lymphocytes or T cells and B lymphocytes or B cells. So these T lymphocyte or B lymphocytes, they represent where the lymphocyte is maturing. If the lymphocyte is maturing in the thymus, then it is known as T lymphocytes or T cells. If it is maturing in the bone marrow, then it is known as B lymphocyte or B cells. So T cells are the cytotoxic cells which used to kill the parasitic infection, which used to kill the pathogenic infection of our body, whereas B cells are those cells which produce antibody against any infection, thereby protecting our body from different infections. Now coming to the second type of agranulocyte, that is the monocytes. Monocytes are mostly the macrophagic cells which phagocytize any kind of extracellular or we can say any kind of foreign material, thereby protecting our body from the any kind of foreign infection. So monocytes will further develop into a phagocytic cell and will protect our body from various infections. Now this is all about our WBC. Now coming to the platelets. So platelets are coming to the platelet part. Platelets are those cells which is the second abundant cell type in the bloods after RBC. The platelets are responsible for blood clotting. Suppose there is a cut in our body, so blood will continue to flow. After some time, the blood automatically stops flowing. So the mechanism by which this blood flow is stopping is known as clotting. This clotting mechanism is done by the platelets or the thrombocytes. So platelet or thrombocytes are around 2 to 5 million per mmQ of blood. So they provide protection against any external injury by stopping the blood flows. Now to summarize all the blood cells, let's say blood cells are divided into three types: RBC, WBC and platelets. RBCs are the red blood cells or erythrocyte. The main function of RBC is transportation of gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen. So RBCs are the most abundant type of blood cells with 4.5 to 5.5 million per mmQ of blood. The lifespan of RBC is around 120 days. They live for 120 days in our blood flow, and after that they go and die inside the spleen. Thus, spleen is known as the graveyard of RBC. Now, RBC consists of 45% of the blood volume. Thereby, the amount of RBC is known as the hematocrit value of our body or blood. Again, by addition of a chemical into our blood, that is known as potassium oxalate, the RBC will settle down in around 30 minutes. So that period is known as sedimentation rate of RBC or erythrocyte. So now coming to the different two condition, if the RBC number is increasing in our body, that will lead to polycythemia, and if the RBC number is reducing inside our body, that will known as anemia. Coming to the second important blood type, that is WBC or leukocyte, they amount for 4000 to 10,000 per mmQ of blood. Then WBC, again if WBC number will increase, then that condition will be known as leukopenia, and if leukocytosis, and if WBC number is decreasing, that condition will be known as leukopenia. So WBC is divided into two types depending on the presence of a particular granules in the cytoplasm. If granule is present, they are granulocyte. If granule is absent, then that is known as agranulocyte. Granulocyte is again divided into three types: neutrophil, eosinophil and basophil, depending on the reactivity of the cytoplasm towards acid or bases. If it is unreacted, then that is known as neutrophil, which has multilobed nucleus, which protect our body from different bacterial infection. If the cytoplasm is reacting to the acidic dye, then it is known as eosinophil, which has bilobed nucleus, which protect our body from helminthic infection. If the cytoplasm is reacting with the basic dye, that is known as basophil, which protect our body from any allergic response by doing hypersensitivity. Now coming to the agranulocyte. Agranulocytes are those with no granules in the cytoplasm. They are of two types, lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes are the smallest blood cells. They are of two types, T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte. T lymphocytes mature in the thymus, whereas B lymphocyte mature in the bone marrow. So these T and B lymphocyte are the most important kind of immune cells. Then they have a dented nucleus, that means their nucleus is slightly dented from one side. Now coming to the monocytes, they are the largest cell we can say, and they have horseshoe shaped nucleus. They will get converted into phagocyte in future or tissue macrophages, which will kill all the foreign particle inside the body. Then coming to the last type of cell type, that is platelet or thrombocyte, which is 2 to 5 million per mm³ of blood. They help in clotting of the blood, thereby providing protection against external wounds. So these platelets help in the protection of our body. Now with this, all the cell types are completed. Then coming to the plasma part, as we know, plasma is nothing but the fluid matrix of the blood. So plasma consists of two kind of substances, organic substances and inorganic substances. So the inorganic substances are mostly present in the crystalloid forms, whereas the organic substances of plasma are present in solution form. The organic substances are like amino acids, vitamins, nutritions, enzymes, hormones, any metabolic waste, they all falls inside the organic constituent of the plasma. When we are talking about the inorganic constituent of plasma, they are the ions like potassium ion, calcium ion. These all ions are the inorganic crystal parts or crystalloid part of the plasma. So plasma consists of around 55% of the blood volume. The total blood amounts for 5 to 5.5 liter in the body of a healthy human being. So this is all about the blood. Now when we are talking about the blood cells, where the blood cells are actually formed. So method of formation of or the mechanism of formation of the blood cells is known as hematopoiesis. Hemato means blood, poiesis means synthesis. So hematopoiesis means the synthesis of bloods. So hematopoiesis is the mechanism of synthesis of blood. So where hematopoiesis takes place? So before in the initial developmental stage, when the fetus is formed, before the fetus is actually formed, during that time hematopoiesis takes place in the yolk sac. After fetus is developed, hematopoiesis takes place inside the liver, and once a baby is born, after that hematopoiesis takes place inside the bone. So where hematopoiesis takes place? Hematopoiesis takes place from the hematopoietic stem cells. So these hematopoietic stem cells which are present inside the bone marrow, they form two different kind of progenitor cells. One is myeloid progenitor and second is lymphoid progenitor. So these lymphoid progenitor cells eventually give rise to all the lymphocytes, whereas the myeloid progenitor cells give rise to all other kind of blood cells like RBCs, all WBCs except lymphocyte and platelets. So this is how our blood cells are synthesized. So the process of synthesis of blood cell is known as hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis happens in the hematopoietic stem cell, which is present inside the bone marrow of a healthy living human being. So inside the bone marrow there are hematopoietic stem cell which divide to give rise to myeloid progenitor or lymphoid progenitor cell. If myeloid progenitor cell is synthesized, they will give rise to RBC, all WBC except lymphocytes and all the platelets. Whereas if lymphoid progenitor cell is present, they will give rise to the lymphocyte. So this is the mechanism of synthesis of blood cells by the mechanism known as hematopoiesis. That's all.